Siona God, Duck with a Kara Callan Watts. Hello, everyone. This is Kara Callan Watts, and I'm here with Cherokee 411 and David Comingdeer. He has another court case we need to talk about separately. We're during the 2021 midterm tribal council elections. He ran for tribal council in what was either District 7 or District 8. He'll explain that to us because we've been redistricted. None of us can remember at this point which district was which, but Adair County. He ran as a really strong candidate in Adair County, ran this awesome, clean campaign from my perspective in 2021, brought in all these absentee ballots, huge turnout at the polls with people in person. But David, you can't run right now because you owe Josh Sands or the election commission money. Remind us what this court case was and why you can't run for office until you repay $13,000 or $14,000 in money, which I didn't understand. And just tell us the story.
Well, I did run in the 2021 midterm. There was no incumbent, and I knew that it was my chance to get in there and win a race and represent my area and start bringing some real opportunities here, some long-term thinking for the improvement of this area for the young people mostly and the old. I got into that race, and there was three people that filed. There was Gina Kirk, Joshua Sam, and myself. All good people, all from good families. And Josh and Gina were more from the southern part of Adair County, and my family is more from the northern part. Proctor, Christie, Chewy, that Westville area, north of Stillwell. That's kind of where all my people are from. So I wasn't related to either one of them or anything like that, but they were more related to people in the southern part of the county. And so we entered the race, got some contributions to my campaign, had a couple of really good people riding shotgun with me every day, helping me go door to door. And that's basically how I ran the campaign, was person to person, door to door, standing on people's porches, talking to them all throughout the district. And I felt real good about it. Went into the election day, and I fell short by 0.5% or something of 50%. It was like 49.5 or something like that. But I did beat Josh and Gina. Josh had took 40% or so, and Gina had took, 10 or 12%. And so it forced to a runoff because I didn't quite hit the mark to win it outright the first time. It was very close though. So we go into the runoff, which lasts a month or two, and we go back at it, campaigning hard, going door to door, getting people fired up to vote. And there was something very interesting happened in that election. The previous election in 2017, the midterm election, we broke the record of walk-in voters that year. I also lost that one. I beat the incumbent at all the polls, but I lost to the absentee ballots to the late Frankie Hargis, who I was good friends with her. But she did beat me, and I congratulated her on that. It was my first campaign. I had a lot to learn. I didn't really turn all the nuts and bolts of the campaign, but I had a good time getting out and campaigning, and I did quite well. I won every precinct in the district. My first time running. But the second time running, I went to a runoff, and in the runoff, it was much shorter. Well, okay, so the 2017 was a record turnout of voters, but in 2021, in the midterm election, we beat the old record of walk-in voters by a lot, and we were really bringing people into the polls. I mean, people were doing what I asked them to do. They were coming in and they were voting. There was people doing absentees and whatnot, and that's fine. Josh, the only way he pulled through and kept me below 50% was because he had a team of paid people, funded by the chief, funded by the Cherokee Nation. They got more absentee ballots than I did, and that's what kept him in there. But otherwise, I beat him like a drum at the polls, and Gina too. And Gina immediately endorsed him, in the runoff. So I went down to her community and got all the votes. I went down and got all that 12% that voted for her. I went right to their houses and I talked to them and I got their votes. We go to the runoff election day, and I knew that I had secured about 209 absentee ballot voters. Those were all being held at the post office in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, in a vault for the election commission to pick up on voting day. I took just about 70% of all the walk-in votes. And this is the interesting thing. There were more people came out and voted in the runoff than voted in the record-breaking midterm election a couple of months before. That never happens in a runoff. Usually in a runoff, you lose about a third or maybe 50% of your voters. They just don't come back and vote second time. But we broke the record again with the walk-in voters. And even in Josh's hometown, where he went to high school and worked at the bank and on the Kiwanis Club and the Chamber of Commerce, he could only bring in 45% of that town in the runoff. I beat him. That was the worst I did at any of the precincts, but I still took 55% of that Stillwell precinct, which is the largest precinct in the district. But the rest of the precincts, I took upwards of, I think Westville, I took like 65 or something percent. The Cave Springs area was almost 80%. Chewy was like 95% or something, in the northern part. Chewy and Watts, that area. I mean, I took them all. And I knew I had this guy beat again. I knew it. They had told me, the people that look at this said, if you get 100 absentees, you're going to win the poll so big, there's no one can beat you. I got 209 absentee ballots. And apparently 60 other people had mailed in ballots that I didn't know about it for me. So I ended up with 269 absentee ballots. It was the highest number of absentee ballots gained by an independent candidate like me in election history with the districts. And I took almost 70% of the polls. So I knew I had this thing won. And then before nightfall, election day, the news came in. Josh had turned in the highest number of absentee ballots in Cherokee Nation history. It was a miracle. He won by 1%. And there again, I'm gone. So I immediately went to the election commission. My next course of action was to get a recount, because I had reports from voters in my district. There had been some irregularities from the other side, from my opposition. There were some possible notary stamp violations. There were quite possible some notary stamp violations, some notary violations on their part. There were other questionable things that were being done. Voters who didn't apply for or request an absentee ballot had been sent an absentee ballot. That means somebody had to forge someone would have had to have forged their absentee ballot request form on their behalf. And they were receiving absentee ballots. And guess who would show up to get the ballot from was Josh. And they would call me and say, Josh Sam showed up to get my ballot. I didn't request one. And so I would go over there and talk with them. And so what ended up happening, I filed for a recount. I had to pay $1,500 cash to the election commission to get the recount. My recount was approved. I turned in the paperwork. I turned in the money. And they said, well, you got to notify your opponent of the runoff or the recount. So I did. I had an attorney serve him a legal letter, and he was emailed about the recount. And I was given an approval letter by the election commission. I picked my watchers to go in and watch the recount, and with notes on what to look for. I had very specific things I wanted to look at when those ballots and those envelopes started coming out onto the table. So they all show up at the commission. The election commission all gathers at the big table, and they bring in the ballots and the case, and they're unlocking it. And in walks a group of people. You're not going to believe this. It was the chief's personal attorney, the infamous Kalyn Free.
I thought we paid her. So you say personal attorney. I thought she got paid like $2.5 million between our tribal government and this Cherokee Nation businesses. But he treats her as a personal attorney.
There you go. I
Okay.
should phrase that. It's the chief's attorney.
Okay.
Personal, but she's a staff, paid by the tribe a lot of money to do this work. But she walks in and says she's representing Josh Sam, and she brought a couple of Supreme Court judges with her or something, and they walk in and stop the recount. They said, "Recount's off. Mr. Comingdeer didn't notify my client properly. He should have been faxed," or something like that. And so the recount was off. They kept my money, the $1,500. They didn't give my money back. So my next course of action, I wanted to file something in Supreme Court and get some sort of investigation underway about the irregularities in the election, because it was screaming fraud. I mean, in what race anywhere in America, in the history of this country, has there ever been an election where a candidate wins 3/4 of the vote or more, and then these mysterious ballots that are turned in by the other candidate, not by a voter, not one of them was turned in by a voter, Kara. They were all turned in by the candidate on election day, and it's a record number. He can't get a single vote at the polls, but yet he turns in a record number, the highest in tribal history, and wins the damn thing by 1%. It was screaming fraud. I found 5 or 6 Cherokee women, elders in my area, that were willing to give sworn affidavits that they had indeed personally witnessed irregularities with the SAM campaign team. And it was all with absentee ballot collection and stuff like that. It was purely related to that. So I went and I took a notary with me, and I only had 3 days to do this. I went every evening for 2 or 3 days and went and talked to these voters, and they gave me their testimonies on a sworn affidavit, notarized. And when I went to the Supreme Court, I turned those affidavits into the judges. Now, what my goal was to sort of invoke some sort of investigation. It was no one was subpoenaed to come to court. No witnesses were subpoenaed or anything like that. It was COVID time. All I was doing was bringing sworn testimonies in for the judges to review and hopefully order some investigative work to be done on the campaign, on the election. Well, guess what happens? Those judges, they just throw it out. They didn't look, they just threw out my evidence. They just said, "Oh, this is frivolous," or whatever they did. And, they just threw it out, dismissed the case. And what that did was then open the door for Josh Sam to sue me for defamation. So now we're getting to the question. Josh Sam sued me for defaming him. I didn't give any testimony in court. I didn't post anything ugly about him on any social media outlet. I didn't even speak badly about him to a single voter. In fact, what I did tell people is that he was a good guy. Because they said, "What do you think about Josh Sam?" I said, "Well, he's a good guy. He's a young guy. He's involved a lot in the city of Stillwell. I'm going to win this race, and I'm going to be his biggest supporter. I'm going to be his biggest fan. But my interest is more in the people out in the country, not just Stillwell. District 7 is huge. It's the densest population of Cherokees anywhere in the United States. Josh's interest is Stillwell, the town of his little hometown of Stillwell, 4,000 people. That's his big interest. My interest is the 20,000 other people that live in this county. And the other 300, 400,000 people that are part of our tribe, or 500,000 or whatever it is now, 600,000. My interest is in all of these people, especially the children. But they just throw my case out. They don't even offer to investigate. Nothing. So they throw the case out. Josh sues me for defaming him. I go to court, and he's got a couple witnesses coming there to give character, his character witnesses, what a great guy he is and all that stuff. And I didn't deny any of that. I would never deny what a good person he is and a good family he comes from. His daddy, Henry, good guy, Cherokee Indian, his mother over here from Rocky Mountain, good family, really good family. But what's fair is fair. And what is fraud should be investigated. And that was my interest, and my voters' interest. With the very limited time we had to gather up some sort of evidence, sworn testimonies, I did that, and they just threw it out. So Josh sues me for making him look bad. He gets up there, he says, "Oh, I won this thing. but Mr. Comingdeer made me look so bad. No one trusts me. There was no joy in winning this election. There was no celebration for me. It's been horrible on me. I've had families block me on Facebook because of him. Because of me, he had family members or close friends or whatever block him on Facebook or something. Boo hoo. But that's the way that went. And then he had a couple other of his campaign workers get up there and give testimony about how I had bashed Josh publicly or something like that, and what a great guy Josh was. And what was interesting when those the two campaign workers got up there and gave their sworn testimony, put their hand on the Bible and said, "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth." This is what they said. Mr. Comingdeer went to a residence on Duck Lane and talked to a woman and told her what a bad person Josh Sam was, and that he was just going to be a puppet for the chief, and he didn't know what he was doing, and and not to vote for him. I never talked to that voter.
Well, and
But
how is that not hearsay? Why isn't the voter there if that's the case?
Exactly the most interesting part of this statement that the guys made, or that the two little witnesses or two little character witnesses made. That was the only voter in District 7 that had passed away since the election.
That's convenient.
A voter I never talked to. I put a card in her door, but she worked at Delonaghy School or something in the kitchen, and I didn't ever get to talk to her. I never spoke to that voter. I never shook that voter's hand. I don't even know what the woman looked like. She died before I ever got to even meet her. In fact, she was the only voter that died since the daggum election, and she's the one that I went to and talked trash about Josh Sam. Not all of the other thousands of voters, just her, the only one that was not even alive to back up what they said. So this thing was ridiculous. Well, Josh didn't win anything on that case. He didn't win the defamation case or anything like that. But what they did was they stuck me with his legal fees. And since the election commission
on the defamation case that he didn't win.
Yes.
So they're using the court system to bully and deter opponents in our democratic elections.
Yes,
essentially.
And that's what the election commission attorney in court on that defamation case came in, and because he had to come in and say a few things, they charged me with his legal fees too, even though he's a paid staff full-time attorney for the commission. Somehow I've got to pay his bills too. And that attorney for the election commission came in and specifically said in court, we have to set precedents here with this Comingdeer. We have to make sure that we don't just have every candidate coming forward trying to sue us or trying to investigate the opponents. These elections are fair, and we need to make an example of this guy to make sure we don't have every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to run for tribal council to come in and start suing us and end up in court and tying us up in court. And so that's what they did. And so they stuck me with all of his legal. I had to pay my own attorney. I had an attorney too, and I had to pay that attorney to represent me in court. She was quickly shut down. It was quite obvious it was already set up. They were told how this was going to go and whatnot. And they said, well, what we'll do, and they're very calculated people. So what they did, they worked together. Josh Sam, the tribal, probably the tribal attorney that we talked about, Kalyn, and then the election commission attorney, they worked together throughout this process to protect Joshua and make sure he, his feelings weren't hurt anymore, and he could be, doing all these great things as a tribal legislator and whatnot. But basically, they stuck me with his legal fees. They stuck me with the legal fees of the election commission, and come to about, I don't know, I've seen varying number, $13,000 or something. So this is where it gets really interesting. 2 years later, or whatever it was, a year and a half later. Well, no, it was later that year. I returned to the Supreme Court, and I talked to the judges, the judges that had put these legal fees on me, and I literally asked if I could stand up and speak. And they said, sure, come on up. So I went up and I raised my hand and swore to tell the truth and speak truthfully to them. So I had a conversation with the Supreme Court judges, all 5 of them. And I said, look, we're all Cherokees here. I said, the election didn't go my way. Josh has gotten everything that he wanted. The Cherokee Nation chief has everything set up the way he wanted it. Josh is making a lot of money. I'm not. I'm making a lot of money. I make enough money to live, but I don't make a lot of money. I'm an artist. I don't work for anybody. I just kind of make money carving ball sticks. And I begged him to forgive the debt. I said, let's just go on about our lives. I said, Josh doesn't need this. I paid my lawyer. He can pay his lawyer. And the election commission lawyer is already on salary. I said, why do I got to pay his thing? Well, the judges said, well, you're free to go. This court, the Supreme Court of the Cherokee Nation, will no longer pursue any legal fees from you on this case. You're free to go. And I said, well, thank you. But they said, but if Josh Sam and his attorney and the election commission wish to take it to another court, like back down to the district or maybe even a civil court outside of the Cherokee Nation, they could do that if they wanted to. But the Supreme Court was going to pursue nothing more against me. I was free to go. So I left. A year and a half later, I filed to run for deputy chief. There were 44 candidates in that chief's election throughout the districts and the candidates for deputy chief and chief. Guess who was kicked out of that election? I was kicked out. The reason I was kicked out is they said I owed legal fees to Josh Sam, the election commission. The same legal fees that the Supreme Court told me they weren't going to pursue anything more about it. Just go on. You're free to go. And I said, okay. Well, so I took it back to the Supreme Court. I said, hey, the election commission kicked me out of the deputy chief's campaign. I said, based on these legal fees. I said, but you guys relieved me of that debt. Oh, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. We just didn't enforce it, they said, or something like that. It was some legal mumbo jumbo kangaroo court type stuff. Well, what had happened in the meantime is Josh Sam, the election commission attorney, and the chief's attorney had worked together and had drafted a piece of law or policy or code or whatever they called it in the election code, and had passed a new law that said if a candidate owes any legal fees in court, that candidate is not eligible to run and should be disqualified. Don't matter what the voters want. They literally made a new law specifically targeting me from ever running again in the Cherokee Nation. I can't run. I mean, I could run, but there's a huge financial hurdle for me to get over. I don't have that kind of money. And I'm not going to ask other people to pay it for me because I think the whole thing's fraud anyway. I think it's a complete joke. So basically, they have in effect blocked me from running. It doesn't matter what these folks want, these Cherokees all over this area. It doesn't matter what they want. It doesn't matter what they want. It doesn't matter what they vote for. This chief, so-called chief down here, and the commission that all work for him, they're made sure I'm done. I've got a huge financial hurdle to get, but they're not enforcing it. It was just a legal block to keep me from running.
So let me summarize really quick. So the woe is me, you hurt my feelings. He lost that case, right?
Yes, he didn't win anything.
So he lost that. Then they come back, charge you with legal fees that make no sense after he lost the case. So instead of it being frivolous against you, they just decide that it's frivolous against him, even though he lost the case, charge you these fees, block you from running, and then they use the courts to say you're free, but then you're not really free, and they keep changing their mind, and they don't even enforce their own actions. So about summarize it.
Yes.
That's insane.
Same as every court
Well,
case I've been involved with.
yeah, and they we did the separate story where you're never been paid the
Mhm.
over $600,000 you're owed for whistleblowing either. So that's a lot, David. Well, I'm glad that you're still sticking it out in the community. You're still here as a cultural person for all of us, and that you were willing to visit with me today to set the record straight about what's really going on inside the Cherokee Nation and how it happens. Is there anything else you want to share about this particular case?
No, I just think it's interesting how uh, just one Cherokee out here who's worked hard for his community, family, people, and tribe as a whole, and still doing it, can be so targeted by this group. What in the world are they so scared of? What what is their problem that they have to target families like that, and or even individuals, to the point where you're basically blocked out from doing anything. You can't really do anything on that elected level, despite what these people want. So I guess my main message is, you got to vote so big, you got to beat the cheat. You got to beat the cheat. In this county, this district, 7, 8 combined, has the power to really, really elect the right people into these jobs to work for us, not to self-serve or gain generational wealth off of our backs. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing, and they're trying to kill people like me politically, and I think maybe even they probably wish I'd go away, if you know what I mean.
I know that all of us want something better for our Cherokee people, and that's exciting. That we still exist, that we have not given up, that we're still here trying to make sure that our people are served.
The Cherokee Nation right now is in a golden age financially. It is unbelievable that we have a population, pockets of populations of Cherokees uh, that are in the most dismal, poverty-stricken situations with absolutely no way out. I mean, 30%, 36% unemployment rate, just a few miles from a multi-billion-dollar headquarters over here with all these smart, so-called smart elected people. What in the heck is going on? I'll tell you what's going on, and I want all the voters to hear this. I want all the people that have always supported me, and those of you that don't support me, I want you all to hear the words I'm about to say. The Cherokee Nation elected body, from the chief on down, must have a very high, dense population of Indians that are broken and broke, in order to ensure that 75% of that annual operating fund comes in from the federal government over here in Washington, D.C. If all these Cherokees were doing well and the unemployment rate was 4 or 5% like it is nationwide, guess what happens to those federal dollars? Don't need them. If those federal dollars were working, this wouldn't be like this out here where I live. It wouldn't be that way. The Cherokees in my area are the cash cow. The broken, poverty-stricken Cherokees in my area where I live are the cash cow for the elected people down there running the tribe. And they have to maintain this level of poverty in this very isolated, highly dense population of people in order to ensure that those big federal dollars keep coming in. It is absolutely sickening.
Unfortunately, I agree with you that that is the case. But I heard you loud and clear. We, the Cherokee people, have the power to change this through our vote, but we have to get out and exercise that. So Thank you for fighting the good fight, David Comingdeer, and thank you for spending time with us today.
Join the conversation. Discover stories and insights that matter to you. Subscribe to Cherokee 411 with Kara and stay connected with independent media, real, relevant, and unfiltered.